Get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Berardelli and Russ Gallo. And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Berardelli back with you. So glad you be with us, whether you're joining us at www.behindenemylinesradio.us or if you're checking us out on AM radio, FM radio, the internet radio, whatever the case may be, we're glad you tuned in with us. Or if we're traveling along with you as a podcast, we're certainly glad to be along for the ride. We've been gone for a little bit. We'll explain that towards the end of the show, what happened, and a little bit of a personal thing with me, but we got a lot to catch up on. But we do have a great show. Sharron Angle is going to be coming on the show, good friend of the show, one of the frontiers people of the Tea Party movement. If you think about the Tea Party movement starting back around the midterms in 2010, and you think about people who were involved in the movement early on, in its formative years, you got to think about Sharron Angle. She'll be talking to us about her planned run for Congress, a little bit of the strategies that she's employed, and a little bit of a call to action to support her and her endeavors. Always good to catch up with her. And speaking of catching up, it's been a while, folks, that since we've done a show, just about a month or so. Mainly because I had some personal health difficulties, which we're going to talk about later on in the show. But there's so much to catch up on. Where to begin? I guess we'll begin with the Parkland shooting and the latest attack on our Second Amendment rights. We can always go into that. We could talk about Jeff Sessions and the news that came out this week that he is going to be instituting a lawsuit against the state of California for interference with immigration policy, specifically their sanctuary state laws and the details there. We could talk about North Korea blinking. We're probably going to get to all of that. North Korea blinking and now coming to the table and what that means. You know what? That's probably as good of a place as any to start. Again, so much going on since we've last talked to each other. But the North Korea news, to me, is one of the more dangerous pieces of the news out there. Because a victory may not necessarily be a victory when we're talking about North Korea. And what do I mean by that? I mean that, for those of you who've been following the news, North Korea has communicated to the president of South Korea, President Moon, that he is willing to come to the table to talk about nuclear disarmament so long as their security is guaranteed and that they were willing to speak to the United States as well. And while this is encouraging, and while this is a victory, it is also entirely possible that a victory may not be a victory. Here's why. This is the same song and dance we've heard from North Korea before. We've talked about the cyclical nature of politics before, especially when we talk about American politics, but let's talk about the cyclical nature of North Korea. They do a lot of bad things, but they do it with a purpose. They ramp up their nuclear programs, not necessarily to watch the world burn, although some may say, and there is a bit of merit to saying that maybe Kim Jong-un does want to see the world burn eventually, but I think that there are some people looking out for him in China and possibly Russia who would not want that scenario to happen, but what they do is they look for leverage to maintain their survival, as the alerts go off on my phone. Lots of news breaking, as always, when we tape Behind Enemy Lines Radio. What do I mean by that now? We've seen the cycle before. I mean, just watch Team America World Police. You'll see it firsthand with Kim Jong-il. There's this nuclear armament and this bid to become a world power and to become a world threat. Then there is the negotiation phase where they'll say, okay, we'll back down so long as we are able to get certain things. And they submit to inspections and they submit to being, monitored and all these things so long as they can have, economic stability or whatever the case may be. The fact of the matter is we've seen all this before. And while President Trump and South Korea and everyone else who's involved can count it as a victory that they have brought Kim Jong-un to the table again, and has brought North Korea to the table again, now the really dangerous part, the really dangerous phase, I should say, begins. Because now you have to talk about what you're willing to give away that will benefit this regime and further its existence in exchange for what has proven to be, over the past years and decades, a temporary lull of security followed by further underhanded behavior. Again, we can cheer the fact that the economic sanctions and the pressure exerted by President Trump and the Trump administration brought Kim Jong-un to the table and made him blink, made him cry uncle, made him, start tapping out a little bit. Great. But what does that mean going forward? President Trump and the Trump administration have to be very careful here not to fall into the same trap that the Clinton administration fell into, that the Bush administration fell into, and that is appeasing the North Korean regime. Now, I'm not saying that now is the time to go in and wipe out the regime in North Korea. I don't even know how we go about that. I'm not a military expert. I don't have the wherewithal to plan out such an attack that would take out the regime but also help the North Korean people. That's not my bag. I don't know how to do that. What I do know is that there are so many pitfalls now going forward. How are we going to constructively engage North Korea to ensure that they are actually dismantling their nuclear program? Are we going to go back to the UN? Is the UN, again, I'll refer to Team America World Police and Hans Blix. Hans Britz is what he called him, remember that? And the UN monitors and all that. And, they were basically evading the eyes of the world while their program was still proliferating and still going forward. How is it going to be different this time? That is the main question that must be asked by the Trump administration and by other international actors. But the problem may not be with North Korea. We know their tricks by now. The problem may be, how are we going to make sure that the international community doesn't get fooled again? What does Russ Gallo say when he quotes George W. Bush, fool me once, shame on you? Or, just make sure you don't get fooled again? How are we going to make sure that we don't get fooled again when it comes to the so-called nuclear disarmament now and this bid for peace? What I like to call is a bid for survival, because according to many reports and multiple accounts, North Korea is dying on the vine. The economic sanctions have really taken its toll on the North Korean people. And, of course, the interests of the government. It may not be sustainable right now for them. Maybe now is not the time to put in a save for the North Korean government and give them what they feel they need to survive. Maybe is the time to continue the hard line. Really squeeze them. Maybe come to the table and demand total nuclear disarmament, but don't give anything in exchange. Give them the right to continue to exist on this planet, instead of giving any sort of economic benefits or any cessation of the sanctions against them. Maybe put some pressure on the UN. Nikki Haley has done a great job at the UN to keep pressure on bad international actors. Point being, folks, the really dangerous phase of interaction with North Korea has just begun. Let's hope that cycle isn't continuing, as we saw with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and other leaders. So that's one piece of news we're catching up on as we're returning to the airwaves. Now let's talk about the recent news breaking this week of the Justice Department suing the state of California, the Socialist Republic of California, as we like to call it here. We're the People's Republic of New York, they're the Socialist Republic of California. You got them on both ends, right? So we're talking about now interference with immigration enforcement, and specifically the sanctuary state policies that California has passed. We just saw recently the mayor of Oakland dropping a dime on certain ICE activities going on in that city that cost us the opportunity to get some hundreds of illegal immigrants who are dangerous with criminal pasts off the streets. It's good to see Jeff Sessions fighting for this. He called the policies of California unjust, unfair, and unconstitutional. And of course, the governor of California, Comrade Jerry Brown, was saying that at a time of unprecedented political turmoil, Jeff Sessions is looking to further divide and polarize, and calls it political stunts, but that may work in Washington, but they don't work here. Folks, the rule of law is what makes our country great. Having experience with the justice system, and also, civil litigation side, but also with the justice system, I can tell you that without respect for the law, society starts to break down. When you have a state refusing to allow the activities of the federal government to move forward unimpeded, and for them to do their job unimpeded, without interference, that's where you start to have a breakdown in justice. How many Kate Steinleys does California need before they get the message that illegal immigration is a problem? Why don't you ask the homeless in the streets of San Francisco and many other cities, Los Angeles as well, how they're doing in allowing illegal immigrants to come into their state unimpeded to take resources from them that should be going towards solving that problem. But of course, California is one of those states that's never going to learn. I dare say they're worse than the People's Republic of New York, because I like to think that there are some people here that would understand that government needs to work on all levels, and there needs to be some cooperation. That, as I say that, I'm saying to myself, well, the People's Republic of New York is no better, because they'll allow accused criminals who are also illegal immigrants in the the local and state justice system to be released, and not allow ICE and the federal government Department of Justice to pick them up on other charges, even when they are requested to do so by the government. That can't stand, folks. We can't allow that to happen. While I understand that states' rights is important, and I'm a 10th Amendment guy, I totally get that. I also recognize that there are certain powers that the federal government has, and one of those is the regulation of immigration. That's very clear. And while it doesn't explicitly say anywhere that the states must cooperate with the federal government in the administration of justice on their level, you have to think that states can't also affirmatively interfere and obstruct justice on behalf of criminals. And that's what's going on in California. There is active obstruction of justice. I'm going to be paying close attention to that suit as time goes on here. But after what happened in Oakland, you had to think that there was going to be a reaction from the Justice Department. And it's finally nice to see the